Hello, members. Tom Morrison here from the great state of Tennessee, your national home office for the Metal Treating Institute. We're excited to be here today to give you a great update on what's going on in the world of air quality standards. It could cost you, check it out, $1 million in new controls and sensors and all kinds of things on your equipment if something does not go in the direction we need it to go. So that's what we're here to talk about today. But before we jump into those elements, I want to mention you three huge happenings going on right now in your association to help benefit you. And one of them is everybody has a challenge with hiring new people, right? No one's walking in your doors, rushing in to come work for you. So we have developed, we have finalized a project, which Heather Falcone on this call was one of the leaders of, the Jobs of Tomorrow. You go out to our heattreatcareers.com website. It's heattreatcareers.com, and you can click on Jobs of Tomorrow docuseries at the top, and you can watch this amazing 6-episode docuseries on what is heat treating, what are the technology advancements coming along in heat treating to get people excited to want to work in the industry, and how the industry has got purpose to it, coming to work every day. And then what are the jobs and the careers that are available in heat treating? And on beside that, a new job portal has been launched with MTI that's going to launch at our big show 2 weeks from now at Furnaces North America, where you're going to be able to put jobs in, looking for workers, and people are going to be able to find your company and the job that you're looking for through this. So that's one big thing that we've been doing. The second big thing is Furnaces North America, the largest network of commercial heat treaters will be at this show. It's the largest heat treat show in North America, and we just topped over 1,000 attendees this week registered to come to that show, and we're expecting to get up to 1,400 by the time it's all said and done. So it's in Columbus, Ohio. You can go to furnacesnorthamerica.com and register now. You can register all the way up to the day, 5 days before the show. If you can just come just to the trade show is only $10 to get in. After October 1, it'll be $25. If you can come, you're going to see 164 top suppliers in everything heat treat. When I say everything, it's everything. And it's the greatest use of your time given how fast technology is changing. So if you can drive there in a day, you want to get there on October 14th through the 16th. The trade show is on the 15th and 16th. So go to furnacesnorthamerica.com and make yourself get there so you can meet peers, see the latest equipment, and hear the latest things happening in heat treat. The third thing that I want to mention too before we get into this is our new technology, WallyBot AI virtual assistant on the website. If you go out to heattreat.net and look at the top, you'll see WallyBot AI and click that. Everybody's heard about AI and ChatGPT. It is just like ChatGPT, but it's privatized for heat treat information through Metal Treating Institute and the things. You can look up things like HR, how to build a safety maintenance policy. You just go in there and start asking questions. It's not technical questions yet because we're working on where it goes with that, but it's more business questions related in there. So go ahead and check it out, test it out. We're throwing in content to learn it every single day, and we want it to be a great resource for you. So those are the big things: Job to Tomorrow, Job Portal, Furnace North America, and then WallyBot AI. All things help benefit you, be greater heat treaters for your customers. So with that said, let's get into air quality standards. Man, my man James over here in California, they got lots of great things going on over there. And Heather, you're in California. And Michael, you chair the heat treat regulatory task force we put together. So real quick, for anybody that doesn't know who you are, let's start with you, Michael. Just 30 seconds, who you are, how you're serving MTI.
My name is Michael Mouilleseaux. I'm the general manager at Erie Steel Limited in Toledo, Ohio. I'm a past board member, and I've been tasked with heading up the regulatory task force for MTI.
Thank you, Michael. Heather?
Hey, I'm Heather Falcone. I'm the CEO of Thermal-Vac Technology, a second-generation family-owned business in Orange, California. I've been a board member. I think I'm starting my second term soon.
And I'm going to take the humble side of it and say, and guess what else Thermal-Vac is? Thermal-Vac in 2024 is the Commercial Heat Treater of the Year awarded last October. So congratulations to you and your team, Heather.
Thank you.
And Mr. James, introduce yourself.
Yes. Home of Thermal-Vac out here in California. I'm zooming in from Sacramento. I'm James Simonelli. I'm executive director of the California Metals Coalition. We are a state association. We deal with everything in the state. We cover all sectors of metals, including heat treating. This is my 27th year with the trade association, and always a pleasure working.
Awesome, James. Well, thank you. Well, I can remember like it was yesterday, Michael. Your last board meeting at MTI, you gave this passionate plea and purposeful talk on how government intervention and government is leaning into our businesses, and just between the new regs on natural gas, thermal processing, certain things like that, and now this air quality stuff. And so we left there going, man, that was pretty powerful. So then the next meeting that you weren't at, and now that you're off the board, they talked about we need to start a regulatory impact committee to look at these things, and who do we think would be the best person to chair this? And obviously, Mike, you weren't there, so they pointed and said, Michael Mouilleseaux, he's the guy we need to put in charge of this thing, which always happens. So Mike, congratulations on being the chair. And let's just start the question off with, what excites you about being a part of this group with this task, and what's the kind of the impact they've had so far?
Well, certainly, the thing that's hiding in the weeds in us are the regulatory efforts by the federal and state governments on our businesses. And at first blush, you'd say that they don't have a tremendous amount of impact on us, but long term, these things, they definitely do. And this immediate effort that we have right now in mitigating the South Coast air quality management's effort to control hexavalent chromium emissions in the exhaust of heat treating furnaces. We might say that's in California, right? The answer to that would be yes. So I'd say, well, what's that got to do with me in Toledo, Ohio? Well, let's not forget that it was the California State Air Resource Board that was formed in 1960, whatever, that was the precursor that led to the formation of the US EPA. So we could sit there and say, I can wait because what's happening in California doesn't directly affect me, or, and this is what the tack that we've chosen to do at MTI, we could be a little bit more aggressive and say, how about if we take this thing on in California and let's see if we can't nip it in the bud and not have to deal with it as a nationwide EPA endeavor.
Well, awesome. So Heather, and it's been great to just jump right in, Michael, in these efforts. And Heather, let's turn to you being in California, and you're on the board. You've chaired a number of committees. So, in your opinion, as a business, as a CEO of a company, why should members really tune in and stay in front of and on their, and tuned into this stuff?
Well, I think all heat treaters can agree with me when I say that we picked a tough way to earn our money already. So we are not in the business of just having it easy and everything going right. So if there is a chance for us to get ahead and stay ahead, similar to the tactics we've taken with other regulatory agencies such as NADCAP or ASTM, it's just a matter of time before you become a victim of policy. And as opposed to waiting for the shoe to drop, we can be a part of what is ahead and be tandem partners alongside the rulemaking. Then we have a chance to make sure our voices are heard. And it's really important for a regulatory body, no matter what it is, anybody making the rules, they need to hear from their constituents. And when they allow us the possibility to be a part of that, it's our obligation and our rights, frankly, as business owners and participants in the industry, to be involved and stay involved. That way, at the end of this game, we can't say, well, gosh, I wish that we had known earlier. I wish that we had had the chance. I wish that we had said something. Well, that's why you're a member of the MTI, is because you have the chance to have your voice heard and be involved at every stage, all the way through from start to finish.
You could be, I mean, you hit the nail right on the head, Heather, about, especially with like NADCAP, how we used to not be very engaged in that organization. We have been now for the last 10 years. And now we got members on the AMET committee who are actually helping write the rules that NADCAP are going to audit people to. And I think the same thing here, James, and you correct me if I'm wrong, James, but I think MTI is weighing in and at least lending some effort to change the narrative and change the scope of what the rules are going to be, because we're helping build awareness and research in the regulatory body's arm over there. So for anybody that doesn't know what 1435 is, give a little background, just kind of the readers, as we said earlier, the Reader's Digest version of the background of Rule 1435 and where we are as we speak right now.
Yeah. Well, thanks again to Tom and everybody. And obviously working with Heather and Michael has been very, very valuable for us. Heather, obviously in California, but this does take a concerted effort. We have to be able to rely on each other, not only for information, technical information, but also to be proactive. I've been running our board for over 2 decades, and, staying off the radar or waiting for something to happen. That's just not the decade that we're in right now, between the internet and between everything else. So I just wanted to echo that sentiment. 1435, what you need to know if you don't know about what it is it is a toxics rule that is being implemented in Southern California. So not the whole state, but it's starting in Southern California. It's looking at all heat treat processes. So any type of heat treat process that you have, type of equipment, the rule is looking at all of them. It's also looking at sources of hexavalent chromium and nickel. So those sources could be the alloys that you're treating. Those sources could be the racks, or anything that you're putting in to the furnace that's a rack. It could be the floor of your furnace, depending on how your furnace is set up. Mechanisms inside, whether those are stainless steel mechanisms inside. If you're heating that heat treat unit over 1200, you might hear that more than once, because the state is only looking at above 1250 degrees. But even if you're doing something you wouldn't consider to have chromium in it, you're going to be regulated by this rule. They're absolutely going to be looking at every operation. So, Tom, in a nutshell, the requirements are going to be enclosing buildings. The requirements are going to be housekeeping. The requirements are going to be, doing BMPs. And then it gets even deeper into source testing, into controls, and maybe even into fence line testing, which we'll talk about why, that $1 million price tag gets put in there pretty quickly. But in short, it's a toxics rule. It's hitting every single heat treater. They're not exempting anybody. And they're looking at every type of operation based on, the areas that could be sources.
So James, doing a little reading and research, it looks like the Fed OSHA limit for worker exposure for hexavalent chromium is 5 micrograms per cubic meter. What is the health risk limit for hexavalent chromium that they're using for this particular rulemaking opportunity?
Yeah, that's usually where I get my first question. Is people say, well, I pass, the Fed OSHA limit of 5 micrograms, and you should be able to stay under 5 micrograms with your workers. Understand, this is not a worker rule. Your workers are not part of this. They're protecting the community. And in their mind, they're protecting kids, they're protecting infants, they're protecting the elderly, and they're using 1 nanogram, not a microgram, 1 nanogram as the threshold. And that is something I'll talk a little bit more about, is also being looked at the federal level. But California has rules in place already that you are a risk to your community if you're emitting 1/100000th of 1 gram, a nanogram of hexavalent chromium. And so, people that think they're out of the woods because they can pass the worker requirements of OSHA, understand this is a whole different branch. This is you're dealing with community risk, and community risk is the highest level because, like I said, they use the lungs of an infant that was just born exposed to these things, and that's how they come up with that limit. So it's a great question because I want to make sure we make that distinction of who's regulating this and what the limit is.
For someone that does, because I was amazed when I heard it, for someone that doesn't understand what's 1 microgram, how big that is. I mean, what is it, like 250 million of a piece of rice?
Yeah, so nanograms, you can do, you guys are the technical, you can start doing the math of how many zeros you have to pull in to get to a nanogram. But what I usually use with the regulators who don't always do the math is if you take a single grain of rice and you cut it into 250 million pieces, one of those pieces is a nanogram, and that's what you're having to control.
Almost seems impossible, right? Which is why we need to be on top of this stuff. So what is we've talked about the $1 million potential. If this was passed in its current form, let's give members an idea of what the current form looks like. If this is passed in its current form, unpack kind of the $1 million question of the $1 million you may have to put in your business to help protect and comply with the rules.
Yeah, depending on the number of furnaces you have, I'm giving you a description of the rule currently. Depending on the number of furnaces you have, you start to move up the chart of requirements. And the chart will start with housekeeping. It'll start with BMPs. It'll start with understanding, your basic operations, but you start going higher. They call it class 1 is the lowest, 2, 3, and 4. And as you move higher on the chart, you get into first class 3, which requires source testing. That's not $1 million issue. But if you start failing source testing, then you trigger controls. Triggering controls will be $1 million. Most facilities, the way you're set up, both the building structure and maybe even the mechanisms of, how your facility is laid out, the amount of engineering, the amount of ducting, the amount of energy, the amount of, putting in a bag house with a HEPA filter. It's a 7-figure exercise all day, based on it. And our experience, understand, I represent all the sectors. So I've been through this with the metal finishers. I've been through this with the metal melters. I've been through this with the scrap shredders. It's all the same. This is not the first time we've been through this. It's the first time the heat treaters have been asked to face this. But if you're looking into the impact of these rules, a single facility could easily spend $1 million based on re-engineering your facility to enclose. And then because, obviously if you're using a bag house, you have to capture the air, both the point source and the fugitives. And so, that collectively and consistently, unfortunately, is a hefty price tag of above $1 million.
So Heather and Michael, I mean, as you hear all this as heat treaters, what kind of goes through your mind? What are things you could encourage the members to pay attention to as we're looking at this effort, and what it impacts the plan out there?
Michael, I'll defer since you're not in California.
Well, it's onerous. It's game changing. It's threatening as the costs are just not sustainable in any of our businesses. And, kind of being a technical guy, one of the things that as James has heard me rail about is that these folks don't understand. So when you look at the mechanism of how hexavalent chromium is generated, particularly from something like a high alloy stainless or Inconel or something like that, it is well nigh impossible for that to be generating hexavalent chromium. And unfortunately, as many of these regulatory agencies have come upon this sort of thing, they have a singular incident that they've investigated, and based upon that singular incident, they've developed a template to say, this is what we're going to prevent. And they want to impose that upon all of us. And the differences in our heat treating processes and equipment and materials are so wide and so varied, and they have not been taken into consideration. It's maddening is what it is. So after you get over that, then we have to say, what is it that we're going to do? And that's the whole purpose of this MTI effort in working with the California Metals Coalition. So is it right? No. Is it technically right? No. Is it sound? It is not. Should it apply to all of us? Absolutely not. Now, having said all of that, what are you going to do to make sure that that doesn't happen?
So Heather, I mean, I know you're on the board. You're part of the team that we approved 120 grand of MTI's reserves to be able to help in this effort. I mean, no heat treater wants to spend 120 grand on their own to try and fend this off. So that's why you become a member of the Metal Treating Institute, so you can work and collaborate together, and the amount of money is not put on any one person. So share just from your perspective as a board member, and maybe what's gone on in California today that you know of as a heat treater in this effort of air quality.
Well, the issue specifically related to this is that it had absolutely zero traction in the minds and business initiatives of the people that were going to be impacted. This was going completely under the radar. The rulemaking took a hiatus during COVID, and then it was back, and it was fierce, and it was moving along very quickly. And there was not a lot of stakeholder investment. So that's going to be the case for a lot of industry issues. The mechanisms of communicating these particular working meetings are not very easy to find. They might send you a postcard or a single piece of mail, and a lot of it is just discarded as, oh, that doesn't apply to me. So the reason that the MTI has taken on this obligation to make sure that our membership stays informed is so that you can understand the issues. You are running a business every single day. The amount of time, money, and effort that is put into compliance is already extreme because of the industry we chose. Adding one more thing for you to sift through on your own and try to read all the documents and try to pick through the language and figure out what meeting to show up and face the intimidation of showing up to a regulatory meeting where, frankly, it does get contentious. They are public meetings, and sometimes it gets a little weird. So if the MTI is doing this on your behalf, that's why we said, hey, we've got to take some of these reserves and put them to work for the membership. There's money to be had to make an impact in the rulemaking. And there's also data to be had that is never before seen or categorized all in one place for our industry. So I think the MTI is on the leading edge of producing this data and providing the voice structure to make sure that you understand what is happening and how you can participate. If you don't want to be on the calls, now you know that Michael's going to be on the calls, James is going to be on the calls, I'm going to be on the calls. And that way, you know, your interests are being represented. You can give your input to the MTI and they can act on your behalf. That's the biggest impact that we can have, a consolidated, powerful voice that helps educate. Like Michael was saying, these people absolutely do not have any idea about what we do. But recruiting in member companies to participate and invite the AQMD to visit and be educated was one of the initiatives that we took onto ourselves. We said, okay, there's a little bit of risk here, but also there's a great reward on the other side if they actually will listen to us. And we made great strides because member companies for MTI, I've got to tell you, are the cream of the crop. So they're not walking into shops that are, you know, that will not be named. Let's just leave it. Maybe not the greatest examples that we'd want to put forth for our industry. But an MTI member company, we feel strong that we represent the best of the industry and we have the most expertise and we can teach from a fundamental level. They didn't even realize that vacuum furnaces existed. I'll leave that just over there. And so that's where this money comes from. It takes money to fight anything in politics. That's why there are lobbyists. That's why there are PACs and super PACs. And so consider this your little super PAC to fight for your industry on your behalf.
Awesome. Thanks, Heather. So James, I know you've been at some of these plant tours. I mean, is there anything that you can share of how those have gone and what are other activities that have been going on so far? And kind of what's the timeline? I know they were looking initially at a timeline that was maybe near the end of the year. So what does the future look like, at least at this point?
Yeah, well, I'll say first and foremost, you know, the actions of the MTI working with CMC, a number of facilities that opened their doors for site tours. They wanted to pass the rule probably November or December of this year. It's going to get pushed out in 2025 because we've already shown them what Michael knows, which is, you know, they are not technically sound. They are not scientifically sound. And their board was going to have a very hard time when their staff could not, you know, defend some of their activities. And so, you know, based on what they've seen endothermic now. Understand for them, if you added heat to metal, that's all they considered was a heat treat unit. That's as technical as it got. But from an emissions standpoint, there are different types of activities, you know, controlled atmosphere type furnaces. So the first answer is done a great job as an industry. Earlier this year, if you heard from me, I said prepare for the rulemaking by the end of 24. It's easily getting pushed into 25. In terms of timing, I know that the Air District is going to probably hold another working group meeting, which is another kind of look at what they're working on. Probably in November is when they're looking at the next working group meeting. So we'll have to prepare for what's going on next there. But the timing, just to answer that question, Tom, we've been successful. I mean, buying time is always valuable. You know, I did not want to be giving this message saying that, you know, we're looking at rulemaking and enforcement by January of 25. That would have been very significant.
So
Piggybacking on what James was saying, the influence that the MTI has had already in conjunction with CMC is immense. So we went from this very restrictive tier structure that would have encompassed hundreds of MTI member companies. Just in California alone, hundreds of companies. Not just heat treaters. We're talking a little lab furnace that sits on a desk somewhere that's used pretty much like an autoclave. So we've gone from this extremely restrictive structure that was going to require almost everyone to have permanent tonal enclosures, housekeeping, you name it. And this tier structure that was now proposed, it only is affecting, I don't remember the number, James, it's like 14 companies total, period,
It's very
at the most restrictive tier.
Yeah, we're whittling it down. We're hoping to get it under 5, Heather, for the most restrictive tier. So it's a significant gain for what we need to do. But go ahead.
And the progress that we've made, I can't tell you, I've been a part of rulemaking for 10 years now. This is the most significant leap that I have seen in a rulemaking session in such a short amount of time. And we still have work to do. Michael wants to hit him next on the 1250 processing temp. Then that's going to be a focus for us. And then further refining activities as opposed to furnace types. So we're still working really hard on this rule, and I think there's still wins to be had.
that's just so exciting to hear. I mean, members sitting at home that can't afford to be there, having this kind of commitment in the process. So it's really protecting our industry. So hats off to y'all and how they involve so much. So James, looking past all the rulemaking and looking at it kind of maybe in the end tunnel and the looking glass, what is kind of the best? What do you feel is the best outcome that'll probably come of 1435? And do you think it could in reality make its way into the federal EPA?
Yes. So number one is we saw the worst case scenario, which is every single heat treater being, put in the same category and having to put on controls. That is what they proposed. And if that had passed as they proposed, which they would have had no problem doing, that would have cost each facility easily $1 million with the amount of controls. The best case scenario is to whittle out as much of that as possible. You're still going to have to do housekeeping. You're still going to have to do some BMPs. You still might have to do a source test, but that over the course of the year might cost you 30 to 50,000. Again, it's comparing outcomes. I like that you use the word outcome, because if we can go from $1 million to 30,000, everybody should be happy with that, given our choices. Not given what we want, but given our choices. So number one, that would be the best outcome, is to keep getting as many facilities out of that highest class 4 as possible. I put in the chat, the feds are already moving forward on rulemaking. If you look at IRIS, which I put a link in there, they've already put out a proposal, and they are trying to do much of what California is doing. And they've slowed down on the EPA side because California slowed down. They're going to wait and see what we do. And if we win in California, if we attack that 1 nanogram, keep in mind that 1 nanogram is a big issue of what we have to fight. If we win on 1435, all of those things will influence Fed EPA. And they've already gone down the track. It's not a question of if. They're already, proposed, a look into the impacts of hex chrome overall. So that's the best case scenario, is getting people out of the highest level as much as possible. And then second is, knowing that the feds are already gone down the path, us demonstrating that the path is not going to be the extreme one and something that's more tempered.
James, I appreciate your connection and your collaboration on this. This has been phenomenal. When I talk to the members in California, they are far beyond excited that we have a collaboration between us, helping you really get you the support you need from a local level to really have an impact on this. So thanks for you and your team's efforts, for sure.
No problem. Absolutely.
So Heather, any last comments from you as the heat treater in California that's really going through this that you'd want to say to the membership?
I really want to thank the member companies that have participated so far. The invitation for a regulatory agency to come visit your shop is no joke. There is a risk there. You get on the radar. They know who you are. They know who your company is. And I just appreciate everyone understanding that the greater good here was served and we saw results. And I know it's scary, and we set a great example of what it looks like to be open and welcoming, and they learned a lot. So my gratitude goes to those member companies and everyone who's participated so far. We've been partnering with Werco a lot. I see him on the call, so I want to make sure he gets a shout out. Gave us a lot of great information about racking materials that contain chromium content. So overall, the MTI member companies, thank you so much for participating, giving us data, letting us into your house, answering questions, sitting on these calls, which can be 3 hours long and really weird, just awkward silences, and basically they ignore you. They don't tell you you're dumb to your face, but you realize that that's what they think of you pretty quick. So just ultimate gratitude, and that there is still a lot of work to be done. So if you have any desire to be involved, even if it's peripherally staying updated, or if you want to contribute data, even if you are not in California, please reach out to any of us and we'd be happy to get you hooked in.
Absolutely. So if you would want to be tuned into this group, the Regulatory Impact Committee, just email me directly at tom@heattreat.net, and we'll make sure that you are tuned in. So Michael, you got to love what you're hearing, the progress and stuff that we made in just such a short time. This hasn't been going on very long. We jumped in with CMC. So I'll leave it for you for last words on this issue.
Well, I think Heather said it really well, that we've made more progress in a shorter period of time than anyone could have even dreamt of having happened. And I mean, that is due to the awful lot of people's efforts and work, and it's not ended. You know, I hope that folks that are looking at this, that you can see that the MTI is committed to voicing our members' concerns about these regulations and making sure that they address validated issues, not prospective issues, and that our members are not taken advantage of. And again, James has pointed out the fact that the federal EPA is already on this. So this effort that we have in California, this is an absolute must. And what we have done in taking MTI funds to support this thing, this is going to pay benefits to the MTI membership hundreds fold. Not just, when you think of the number of people and you think of what the possibility is that we would all have to undertake if these rules were to go into business. And I am absolutely delighted. You know, forewarned is forearmed. And I think that we can see that now. So I would ask that all of our MTI member companies take a look at this thing and participate and make sure that you are aware of that. And one last thing is, please don't forget that you've got federal and state legislators, and these people listen to you as business owners. And you need to let them know that these things are going on and what the potential impact that it's going to have on your business, and then on the community, and then on them, and let them know that this is something that they need to weigh in on. James, I think it would be fair to say that if we had legislators participating in some of these things, or at least working behind the scenes and on our behalf with these regulatory agencies, that it could have a positive impact.
Oh, it absolutely always has. You know, the personal connection, the site tours, seeing the workers. You know, it's easy to punch somebody in the mouth you don't know, and if they don't know who we are, they're going to come after us. But once we put faces to names, Heather was one of the facilities opened the door. She has a whole wall of her family that was part of that company, and seeing that changes it. And so whether it's an elected official, a regulatory agency, we have to always be calculated. I'm not saying that, we take it lightly, but it always does make a difference to, engage them at many levels. So I'd agree with you, Michael.
Well, awesome. Michael, Heather, James, thank you so much. Thanks everybody for listening in. This has been awesome. I've been here 17 years now at MTI. What I love about this organization is they act with purpose, with power, and with passion to make a difference. So you have a fair opportunity to compete every single day. So don't forget that, members. Y'all always remember, my favorite saying is, you're not just strong, you're MTI strong. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next time on MTI's live webcast. Have a great day.